Cairoבין Per Gimel. Before we start Mishnah Aleph, we'll give a shtikl akdama to the next three prakim. The next three prakim discuss the halachas of tchum and erev tchumen. On Shabbos and Yom Tov, a person is asumid rabbanon to go more than 2,000 amas from his makom shvisa. This limit is known as the tchum Shabbos, the Shabbos boundary, or just plain and simple the tchum. A person's tchum is measured from his residence, which is defined based on the place where he was when Shabbos began. If he was in a town, the tchum is measured from the town's limits. If he was in an isolated building, the tchum is measured from its outer walls. And if he was out in the open, his residence extends 4 amas, and the tchum is measured from that area. A person can change his place of residence and his makom shvisa and memela his tchum before Shabbos by means of an Iruve tchumen. He does this by putting food in a place up to 2,000 amas away from the actual residence. With respect to the hilchas tchumen, his residence is shifted to that place, and the tchum extends 2,000 amas from there. This does not give him more than the 2,000 amma limit. It merely shifts the point from where you started measuring it from. For example, if he places an erev 2,000 amas north of his house, he may go as far as 4,000 amas to the north of his house. 2,000 amas past where he put the erev, but he may not go to the south at all, because that would take him more than 2,000 amas away from his erev. The Mishnah says, what type of foods can be used for an erev tchumen or for shitufim avoyos? Shitufim avoyos, we explained, was making like an erev chatzeris for all the chatzeris in the mavoi. So you may make an erev or shituf with any type of food except for water and salt, because they're not considered food, because they're not served as a main course or a side dish. Both erev tchumen and the shitufim avoyos are based on the idea that a person's residence is a place where he keeps his food. When a person makes erev tchumen, he puts the food in a certain place, and that place is regarded as his residence, so that his tchum is measured from there. The same svara applies to shitufim avoyos as well. When the residents of the mavoi put food in the chutzner, all of them are viewed as living in that chutzner. Since the food of an erev and a shituf must establish a person's residence, only that which is considered food can be used for this purpose. All kinds of food may be bought with money of ma'aser sheni, except for water and salt, because they do not meet the requirements set by the Torah for this purpose. Ma'aser sheni is one of the portions that must be separated from produce of Eretz Yisrael. The portion must be eaten in Yerushalayim. The owner lives far from Yerushalayim and is unable to bring the produce there. He exchanges it for money, which he takes to Yerushalayim and uses it to buy food to be eaten over there. The Gemara learns from a pasuk in the Torah that this money may be spent only on food that can be described as a fruit from fruit, meaning it has, if you plant it, you could get more fruit from it, or it grows from the ground. It's a plant that derives nourishment directly from the soil, or is an animal that eats such plants. Water and salt meet neither of these conditions. One who makes a neder to abstain from nourishing food is mutter to eat water and salt, because they do not provide nourishment. Ma'arvin la nazir b'yayin, you may make an erev for a nazir with wine, even though he's forbidden to drink it. Ul Yisrael b'truma, and for Yisrael, someone who's not a kohen with truma, even though he's forbidden to eat it. Although the erev may not be consumed by its owner, in these cases it's still a good erev because it may be consumed by other people. The owner of the erev doesn't actually have to eat it, nor does he even have to be mutter to eat it. As long as there is some kind of heter to eat it, that's going to be a good erev. Therefore, a nazir can use wine as his erev, since it may be drunk by other people, and a non-kohen can use truma as his erev, since it may be eaten by a kohen. Sumchis oimer b'chulin. Sumchis says that an erev for Yisrael must be made with chulin and not with truma, because the erev is valid only if the owner is allowed to eat it. Sumchis disagrees only in the case of a non-kohen who uses truma. He agrees that a nazir can use wine as an erev because there's a way for him to drink wine as follows. A person becomes a nazir by making a neder. And like most other nedarim, the neder of naziris can become bottled by 3 judges or the yachid mumche. So through the process of being mevatel the naziris, a nazir can become mutter to drink the wine again that same Shabbos. But a kohen can't become ois kohen to be matir eating the truma. Besides for being fit to eat, the food of a eruv tchumen must be in a place that the owner can have access to. The place that an eruv becomes the owner's residence when Shabbos begins. If it's impossible for him to go there, he cannot be considered his residence. However, he doesn't actually have to go there. So the Mishnah discusses whether a kohen who is forbidden to become tameh, tumas meis, can put the eruv tchumen in a place that has tumah. V'lakohen b'beis pras. An erev tchumen can be placed for a kohen in a beis pras, which is an area that's suspected to contain human bones, because he may walk to the erev if he's careful not to touch any bones. The Mishnah refers to a field in which a grave was plowed over. We suspect that the bones or bone fragments were scattered over a wide area. Therefore, a kohen who is forbidden to be metamet to a mace may not walk there, because he might touch or move a bone large enough to transmit tumah, Etam kasa oira, the shear of tumah over here we're talking about is the size of a pearl of barley. However, he is mutter to go into the field. If he walks, he blows away the loose dirt that's on the ground in front of him, so that he will expose and see any bone fragments lying there, and thus be able to avoid moving or touching any atzmais hames. Rabbi Yehuda says that the Erev Tchumen can be placed even in a cemetery because he's able to go and make a partition between lochoitz, means he's able to make a mechitza between him and the graves, and then eat the Erev. Since it's possible for the kohen to access the Erev, it's a good Erev. One who passes over a grave becomes tamei from it. A kohen is therefore also from entering a cemetery because he'll certainly walk over a grave. The Mishnah means that a kohen can be carried into the cemetery in a large box or similar container which serves as a mechitza that blocks the tumah from him. The Tanna Kama disagrees with Rabbi Yehuda and maintains that no one, even in Israel, may put food of the Erev in the cemetery, because by using it to keep his food safe, he's being netted from the kvarim, which is aser. It's mesim, and the kvarim is aser behano. So therefore, a person lo yaniach odom erev beis hakvaros. So a person is therefore not allowed to leave his erev in the beis hakvaros. Mishnah Beis, ma'arvim b'dmai, may make an erev out of dmai, which is food of an amoretz. The Tanna Kama, the previous Mishnah, says that for an Erev one may use food that he himself is forbidden to eat but is mutter to others. Because it is, the Mishnah lists some foods that are valid for an Erev and some that are not. So Ma'arvim b'dmai may use dmai because it's fit for poor people to eat. The Chacham allowed poor people to eat dmai without taking off any meiser. U'b'meiser rishon shenitel trumasoi, or with meiser rishon whose trumas meiser has been separated, which is fit for anyone to eat. U'b'meiser sheni v'hektish sheniftu, or meiser sheni, or food that he was makdish, but then he was paided, which is also fit for anyone to eat. Like kahana b'chalav or truma, and kahanim as well as Yisraelim may make an erev with chalav or truma because these foods are fit for kahanim. It's interesting why we're saying that Yisrael here can also. So as we learned in the previous Mishnah, by the Tanna Kama, even someone who's not a kohen may use truma for this erev. The same applies to challah. The Mishnah mentions kahanim only because they're the ones that are most likely to have truma and challah in their possession, because the Yisrael tries to give it to a kohen as soon as he can. Avlei b'tevel, however, he may not use an erev with tevel, which is produce that is vadai, that not all the required portions have been removed from it. V'lei b'meiser rishon shelo nitel trumasoi, with meiser rishon whose trumas meiser has not been separated. V'lei b'meiser sheni v'hektish shelo niftu, or with meiser sheni outside Yerushalayim, or food from hektish that he was not paid, because meiser sheni is also outside Yerushalayim, and hektish are also everywhere. So these things he's not allowed to use as the erev. Someone who wants to make an Erev Tchumen does not need to put the food there himself. He can send another person to do it for him. However, not everyone is qualified to serve as the shliach for this purpose, as the Mishnah will now explain, that if someone sends his Erev Tchumen in the hands of a cherish, someone who's deaf-mute, shaita is a person who's deranged, is not mentally there, or a katan, or a minor, or in the hand of a heretic who does not accept the hilchas erev, either it's duki or a kusi, these kitim, these groups reject any dinim derabbanan which include eruvei tchumen. So the erev is not a good erev, ain't erev. This is because one was placed in erev with the intent, with the kavanah, to make its location a residence. Chereshaita v'katan, or somebody that's not moed be'erev, cannot be trusted to have this kavanah. These halachas are relevant only to Erev Tchumen, which requires a kavanah, because it's a legal procedure through which the owner acquires a residence. He's kain shvisa. This is in contrast to a ruvei chatzer, to shtufei mavais, which there's no need to make a kinyan shvisa, and it can be used as, and these people could be used as a messenger. So this we're talking about is dafka Erev Tchumen. However, if the owner told another qualified person to accept the food from his erev, from one of the unqualified people that we just mentioned in the Mishnah, to place it for him, so then it's a good erev. Meaning, he gave the food for the erev tchumen to an unqualified person and told him to bring it to a qualified person. And he also instructed the qualified person to take it from him and place it on his behalf. The erev is only good if the owner saw the unqualified person hand it over to the qualified person. Only then can he assume that the person, the bardas, has placed the erev properly. Mishnah Gimel. Nasna be'ilan. Someone who makes Erev Tchumen does not need to put the food in exactly the place where he intends to designate as his Makom Shvisa, as long as the food is accessible from the designated place during Ben Hashmoshes. Ben Hashmoshes is a period of time that lasts from sunset until the appearance of 3 stars. It's a big suffix and a big machlekes whether this period belongs to the outgoing day or the incoming night. So it could be it's part of Shabbos. It could be it's not, so it's a suffix. We're machmir generally. So, nasna be'ilan l'mayla me'asar tvachim ein iruva erev. This Mishnah discusses some applications of this halacha. Starts with a case of a tree that's in a Rishus Harabim. The person who wants to be kind of shvisa on the ground next to the tree, in the Rishus Harabim, but he put the food on one of the tree's branches. So, nasna be'ilan l'mayla me'asar tvachim ein iruva erev, l'mata me'asar tvachim iruva erev. If he put the food on a tree and it's above 10 tvachim, his erev is not good. This is because the food is in a Rishus Hayochid. So it would be aser during Ben Shmashas to bring the food to the place in the Rishus Harabim that he wants to be kind of shvisa in. Since he cannot take the food at the necessary time, the erev is no good. However, if he put the food below 10 tvachim, his erev is a good erev. The food in this case is not in Rishus Hayochid, but in a Carmelis. A Carmelis is an area that measures at least 4 by 4 tvachim, but it's not a Rishus Hayochid. Minat Torah, the malacha of avar, of carrying, applies only to carrying between Rishus Harabim and Rishus Hayochid, and is therefore mutter to carry from any other Rishus to a Carmelis, or the other way around. Chacham, however, ashered carrying in and out of a Carmelis. Food in this case is not in Rishus Hayochid, but in a Carmelis. So carrying from a Carmelis to Rishus Harabim is also only midrabanan, and the Rabbanans are lifted during Ben Shmashas for the sake of making Eruv Tchumen. During Ben Shmashas on Friday evening, it's halachically unclear whether Shabbos has begun. One is allowed to be over on Dinim D'Rabban at this time for the sake of a mitzvah. And as we'll learn in Paraches, Eruv Tchumen may be made only for the purpose of a mitzvah. It is therefore mutter to be over D'Rabbanon during Ben Shmashas to shtel avek the Eruv. He is mutter therefore to take the food at the required time, which makes the Eruv then valid. Nasnei babor afilu amek mea am Eruv Eruv. The Mishnah now brings a halacha where someone wants to be kind of shvisa in the Carmelis and he put the food in Rishus Hayochid. If you put the food in a pit, even if it's 100 amas deep, the Eruv is a good Eruv. The pit's a private place, it's a Rishus Hayochid, because it's at least 4 tvachim long, 4 tvachim wide, and 10 tvachim deep. And he wants to be kind of his shvisa in the adjacent area, which is a Carmelis. So carrying from a Rishus Hayochid to a Carmelis is also only midrabanan, as we mentioned earlier. Yisurim D'Rabbanan are lifted during Ben Shmashas for the sake of making an Eruv Tchumen. The Eruv is therefore good, since he's mutter, he has a heter to access the food from his intended residence from the Makam HaShvisa at the time when he's going to need the food. Nasnai Beresh HaKona Beresh HaKandas. If he places the food on top of a reed or on top of a pole, and he wants to make his residence next to the reed or the pole, as long as the reed has been uprooted and it's only stuck into the ground, then even if it's 100 amas high, it's a good eruv. There's no problem of carrying in this case, because the top of the reed of the pole is a makom patur, from which carrying is mutter, even midrabanan. Nevertheless, the eruv is valid only if the kana has been uprooted, because if we're still planted in the ground, taking food from it would be aser, for fear that one will break off a piece of the reed, which would be from the malacha of kaitzer. The chacham aser taking an object that's on top of a reed, because one might break the reed, which is an Issa Deraisa. Although we lift Yisurim D'Rabbanan Ben Hashmashas for the sake of the Eruv, this Issa was left in place because the reed is so fragile and weak that one is almost certain to break it, so you have to be extra zohir with this kana. But if the reed is merely stuck to the ground and not planted, this concern is irrelevant and the Eruv is good. Nasne B'Migdal V'Avad HaMaftach Harez Eruv. If you put the food in a cabinet, lock the cabinet, then lost the key, it's a good Eruv. Although he can't open the lock, he can open the cabinet during Ben Hashmashas by cutting the rope with a knife. What rope are we talking about over here? Cutting the rope on Shabbos is also midrabanan, like any other Yisurim D'Rabbanan. This one is lifted during Ben Hashmashas for the sake of an Eruv. Right, so the Rav explains that we're talking about a case that the way this thing is locked, the way this cabinet's locked, is it's tied with strings and ropes. So if he doesn't find the key, he has to rip it open with a knife. Rabbi Lezer says that if he doesn't know where the key is, meaning it might be lost, it's not a good Eruv. According to Rabbi Lezer, it's also to cut the rope with a knife, therefore the key might be lost, the Eruv is no good. Rabbi Lezer holds that using a knife to cut the rope is also because of muksa. He's very machman hilchas muksa, and holds that even a utensil, a klisha, malach leheder, may be moved only for that primary use. For example, a knife designated for cutting food may not be moved for cutting anything else. In the case of our Mishnah, only a food knife is available, therefore it's impossible to open the cabinet except by committing two Yisurim D'Rabbanan according to Rabbi Lezer. Number one, moving the knife for something other than cutting food, and number two, cutting the rope. An activity that involves two Yisurim D'Rabbanan is forbidden even Ben Hashmashas, because even if generally we say that Ben Hashmashas will lift an Isser Rabbanon for you, but that's only one Rabbanon, not two. Mishnah Dalit, Nesgalgal Chutz Latchum. If one places food near the edge of his tchum, almost 2,000 amos in the regular residence, unless a person makes an effective error if his tchum is measured from the house in which he sleeps at night, and it rolled out of the tchum, v'nafal of gal in Nisrach, or a pile of rubble fell on it, or it was burnt, or truma v'nitbis, or it was truma and it became tamin, may no longer be eaten. In each of these cases, the halacha is mebayid yomei eruv. If the accident happens when it was certainly still daytime before Ben Hashmashas on Friday, it's not a valid eruv because the food cannot be accessed or cannot be eaten during Ben Hashmashas. Mishech hasheicha harei eruv. However, if the accident happened after it definitely become dark after Ben Hashmashas, or it's vaday laila, so then it's a good eruv since the food could be eaten during Ben Hashmashas. The eruv took effect at the time and then remains in force throughout Shabbos, regardless of what happened to it later. Im safik, but if he doesn't know when the accident happened, so the halacha is a machlekes. This is like a person driving a donkey and a camel who cannot walk in front of the donkey or behind the camel, but only between the two animals. A donkey is driven from behind, while a camel is led from the front, so a person who guides both at the same time must walk between them. In our case, the owner may walk only between the Erev and his house. He may not go beyond the Erev because the Erev may be no good, and he may not go beyond his house in the opposite direction because the Erev might be good. So he's confined to the area between the two. Remei Rabbi Yehuda hold that since it's not known whether the Erev took effect or not, the owner must accept both possibilities. He must accept that the Erev may be good, which means that his tchum would be measured from the Erev. But at the same time, he must accept the possibility that the Erev is not good, which means that his tchum is measured from his house. So he may go neither more than 2,000 amos from his house, nor more than 2,000 amos away from the Erev. The result is that he may not leave the area where the two tchumen overlap. Rabbi Yossi, Reb Shimon, Safek Erev Kosher, any unknown status of an Erev is valid, is a good Erev, since the Erev was known to be accessible and fit to eat when it was placed, we assume that it stayed that way through Ben Hashmashas. This is based on the principle of Chazaka, which says that we assume that something remains in its original state and it hasn't changed, unless we know about those that it changed. Omer Rabbi Yossi, Avtolmas Hayed Mishum Chamishas Kenem Safek Erev Kosher. Avtolmas attested in the name of 5 Chachamim that an Erev of unknown status is good. And I mean that a suffix, it sounds like you don't even have to come on to Chazak because that's the halacha that a suffix Erev is kosher. Mishnah Hey. Masna Adam al Eruvi ve'omer bo evdei kachov min hamizrach Eruvi lamar v'lamar v'Eruvi lamizrach. The Mishnah discusses a case of a person who doesn't know whether he'll need his Erev on Shabbos, and if he does need one, he's not sure where to put it. The first example is a person who heard that the tax collectors might be pursuing him on Shabbos and he wants to escape from them. But he doesn't know if they're going to come from the east and will have to run to the west, or they're coming from the west and will have to run to the east, or from both directions. It's also possible that they won't show up at all. So the eitzah is to put 2 Eruvs, one in the east and one in the west. However, a person cannot have more than one Makom Shvisa on Shabbos. Therefore, he must make it clear that depending on what will happen on Shabbos, only one of the Eruvin will actually take effect. So, Masna Adam al Eruvi ve'omer. A person may attach a condition to his Eruv, for example, if he wants to avoid tax collectors who might come from the east, or from the west, or from both directions, so they may not come at all. He may put out 2 Eruv in one in each direction and say like this: if the goyim will come to collect taxes from the east, my Eruv should be on the west. If they come from the west, my Eruv should be the one on the east. And if they come from the east and the west, I'll go to the direction that I will choose on Shabbos, and my Erev shall be the one in that direction. And if they don't come at all, either from the east or the west, neither Erev shall take effect. Rather, I'll be like the other people of my town who did not make an Erev. Then another case the Mishnah is going to talk about is, it involves a person who heard that a Chacham might come to give a shir outside the tchum of his town on Shabbos. He wants to hear the shir, but he doesn't know whether the Chacham is going to come from the east or the west. It's also possible that 2 Chacham will come, one from each direction. It could be that no one's going to come at all. So he may put out 2 Erev in one in each direction, provided that he makes it clear that only or neither will take effect. Now, in Bach Chacham and Amizrach Eruvi Lamarv, if the Chacham comes from the east, my Erev should be on the west. If he comes from the west, my Erev should be on the one to the west. If one of the Chachamim comes to the east and another one comes to the west, I'll go to the place that I will choose on Shabbos, and my Erev shall be the one in that direction. And if no Chachamim come, either to the east or to the west, neither Erev shall take effect. Rather, I'll be like the other people in the town who made no Eruv. Now, what's the svar over here of the first case of Masan Adam al Eruv v'Omer? The Eruv to the west of the town is the one that shall take effect, and the other one will come batal. A person can have only one Mokum Shvisa on Shabbos, and the location of that residence must be established during Ben Hashmashas, meaning at least the latest by Ben Hashmashas. Nevertheless, if a person put out two Eruvin before Ben Hashmashas, it's possible to wait until Shabbos to find out which one of them was his residence from the beginning. Once that Eruv is chosen on Shabbos, Mafreya becomes his Mokum Shvisa from before Shabbos. This is an application of the Din of Brera, which says that the status of something can be retroactively determined by an event that will happen later. It's a machlekes whether the Yesod of Brera is good or not, and the Tanra Mishnah does agree that Yesh Brera, and we could use it in this case. Okay, Mishnah Vav. Rabbi Lezer says Yontif Hasamach l'Shabbos ben milfaneh ben milachareho. When Yontif falls next to Shabbos, whether before it on Friday or after it on Sunday, the Mishnah refers to Eretz Yisrael, where every Yontif except Rosh Hashanah lasts only one day. The halacha regard to Rosh Hashanah will be discussed in the next Mishnah. Ma'arav Adam Shnei Ruvin v'Omer, a person can make two Eruvin in different directions, such as east and west, and say, Eruvi Harishon l'Mizrach v'Hasheni l'Marav. My Eruv on the first day, I will use on the first day the Shabbos Yontif combination, shall be the one to the east, and my Eruv for the second day shall be the one to the west. The Eruv for the first day takes effect during the Ben Hashmashas of the first evening, and the Eruv for the second day takes effect during the Ben Hashmashas of the second evening. For this reason, the food of the second Eruv must still be in place during the second Ben Hashmashas. Harishon l'Marav Hasheni l'Mizrach, or he may say, my Eruv for the first day shall be the one to the west, and my Eruv for the second day shall be the one to the east. If you want to travel outside of Schom only on one of the 2 days, you can put out a single Eruv and say, Eruv Harishon Hasheni Kivnei Iri. My Eruv shall be only for the first day, and for the second day I shall be like the other people of my town who did not make an Eruv. Eruvi Hasheni v'Risha Kivnei Iri. Or he may say my Eruv shall be only for the second day. For the first day I shall be like all the other people of my town. Rabbi Lezer holds that although the Shabbos and Yontif are consecutive, each is treated separately with regard to the halachas of Tchumen, and one may establish a different residence for each day. The Chachamim say no. Ma'arv l'Ruach Achas inam arv kolikar. Surely you agree that for a single day of Shabbos and Yontif one can make an Eruv only in one direction for the entire day, or not make an Eruv at all. One cannot make an Eruv to one direction for half the day and Eruv to a different direction for the other half of the day, because a person can have only one residence for a single day. Similarly, when Shabbos and Yontif are consecutive, since they form a single 48-hour period of Kedusha, so one can either make the same Eruv for both days or not make an Eruv at all, but one cannot make an Eruv in different directions for each day. So Ketzad Yatzis, what's the Eitzah? How should he make the Eruv for both days? He should bring the food for the Eruv before Ben Hashmashas on the first evening to the desired place, or wait until dark. So he's kind of shvitza there on the first day, and after Ben Hashmashas he should take it and go home where he can keep it safe. And then Basheni Machshach Olav Oichle. On the second evening he should bring the food back. He should bring the food back to the same place and wait until dark, so re-establishing his residence for the second day. Then after Ben Hashmashas he may eat it by taking the food home after the first Ben Hashmashas, then bring it back before the second Ben Hashmashas. He prevents the food from being lost. He must bring back the same food. He can't use different food because designating new food on the first day to be an Eruv for the next day is considered an act of preparing a Shabbos and Yom Tov, Hachana, which is going to be Asr. So Basheni Machshach Olav Oichle, on the second evening, he should bring the food back to the same place and wait until dark. So he's re-establishing his Makom Shvisa for the second day, and after Ben Hashmashas he could eat it. By taking the food home after the first Ben Hashmashas, then bringing it back before the second Ben Hashmashas, he prevents the food from being lost. As a result, he benefits with regard to his walking because the food will still be available for him to make a new Eruv on the second day, which will allow him to walk an additional 2,000 ams in that direction. And he benefits with regard to the food of his Eruv because it will be available for him to eat on the second day. If, however, it was eaten or lost on the first day, and therefore it was not in place during the Ben Hashmashas of the second evening, his Eruv is good for the first day, but not good enough for the second day since it's no longer with us. Since it was in a place during the first Ben Hashmashas and not in the second one, so it's effective only the first day and not the second. Rabbi Lezer responds to the Chachamim that he says to them, since you said that the Eruv eaten on the first day is not valid for the second day, you clearly agree with me that Shabbos and Yontif are two separate types of Kedusha. If there were a single type of Kedusha, Any Eruv put out during the first Benish Mashas would be effective automatically till the end of the day, meaning till the end of that Kedusha. So regardless of what happens to it on the first day, if so, you should agree that one can establish separate residence on each day. In fact, the Chacham are unsure whether the 2 days form a single period of Kedusha or 2 separate days. So in order to satisfy both possibilities, they hold that one must be Machmer in every situation. Since the 2 days might be viewed like a single day, so they paskin earlier that a person cannot make an Erev in one place on one day and an Erev in a different place on a different day. On the other hand, since there might be 2 separate Kedushas, so the Erev for the first day must be in place at the beginning of the second day. So it ends up being very shver ba'atzam. So it's like Memenu Shachan, like we're not even being miyash of it. Mishnah Zayin. The next 3 Mishnayos discuss the Yom Tov of Rosh Hashanah, which lasts 2 days in Eretz Yisrael. Why? Although the Torah says that Rosh Hashanah is only 1 day, the first of the month of Tishrei, the Yom Tov is observed for 2 days, even in Eretz Yisrael. The reason is as follows. Each month of the Jewish calendar coincides with the cycle of the moon, which lasts about 29 and a half days. Therefore, a month can either be 29 or 30 days long, which in turn means that the first day of the next month, Rosh Chodesh, can fall either on the 30th day after the start of the previous month or on the 31st day. In the times of the earlier times, the Bezdin, Sanhedrin in Yerushalayim, decided which of the 2 days is Rosh Chodesh. If on the first of the 2 days, Adam testified before Bezdin that they had seen the new moon, the Bezdin would declare that day to be Rosh Chodesh. If no reliable witnesses testified that day, the second day would be Rosh Chodesh. The method of determining Rosh Chodesh was used up to a certain point until the current fixed calendar was established. Bezdin would send out messengers to tell people which day was Rosh Chodesh so that they would know when to observe the Yom Tovim of each month. Usually the Shluchim reach the communities in Eretz Yisrael in time for Yom Tov. In the case of Rosh Hashanah, however, which falls out on the first day of the month, even the residents of Eretz Yisrael cannot be informed in time. Therefore, even if they didn't know which of the 2 days was Rosh Hashanah, so they observed it for both days at a doubt. So, really, the creation of the 2 days of Rosh Hashanah was really a kedei to be miyashav the Savak of Sveika D'Yoma, and it's the only one that in Eretz Yisrael still blibes with this. So Rabbi Yehuda says, Rosh Hashanah Shah Yori Shem Tesaber. Before Rosh Hashanah, one's concerned that the current month of Elul might be extended, it'll last 30 days. Rosh Hashanah must be observed for 2 days, and one needs to travel in a different direction on each day. So a person may make 2 Eruvin, one to the east and one to the west, and say Eruv Berishin L'Mizrach B'Sheni L'Mar. My Eruv for the first day should be the one to the east, and my Eruv for the second day should be the one to the west. Berishin L'Mar B'Sheni L'Mizrach. Or he may say, my Eruv for the first day shall be the one to the west, and my Eruv for the second day shall be the one to the east. If you want to travel on only one of the days, you can put out one Eruv and say Eruv Berishin B'Sheni K'V'Neiri. My Eruv should be for the first day, and for the second day, I should be like the other people in my town who did not make an Eruv at all. Eruv B'Sheni Berishin K'V'Neiri. Or he may say, my Eruv shall be for the second day, and for the first day, I should be like the other people of my town. According to Rabbi Yehuda, the 2 days of Rosh Hashanah are 2 independent kedushas, and one may therefore establish separate residence for each one. The Chacham did not agree with him. Chacham hold that the 2 days of Rosh Hashanah, it's Kiyam Arichta Damya, it's Kedusha Arichta, it's one long day, it's a long continuous period of holiness, so the residence for one day must be the same as the residence for the other. And we'll get back to the same discussion as we had in the previous Mishnah. Okay, Mishnah Ches. Vaydam Rabbi Yehuda. The Mishnah teaches that the machlekes between Rabbi Yehuda and the Chacham that the 2 days of Rosh Hashanah apply not only to Ruvei Tchumen, but also other areas of halacha. And the Mishnah starts off with a discussion of the Isser, the Rabbanon, of separating Truma and Meiser on Shabbos and Yom Tov. Vaydam Rabbi Yehuda also said, Masna Adam al Kalkala, Yom Tov Rishon Eichel B'Sheni. A person may make a condition by the basket of Tevel on the first day of Yom Tov, which is Rosh Hashanah, and Nida on the second day. So he may designate a portion of the Tevel as Truma or Meiser on the first day and say, if this is an ordinary day and it's not Yom Tov, so the food I'm separating should become Truma. But if today's Yom Tov, nothing shall take effect. And the next day he says, if today's a regular day, is a weekday, the food I separated yesterday should become Truma now. If today's Yom Tov, it already became Truma yesterday. After making this statement on the second day, he may eat the rest of the food because the separation definitely took effect by then. Separating Truma in this manner is Mutar and Rosh Hashanah because the food became Truma on whichever day was not Yom Tov. Similarly, an egg that was laid on the first of Rosh Hashanah may be eaten on the second day. An egg laid on Yom Tov is forbidden to be eaten only on Yom Tov. Therefore, if the first day was Yom Tov, the egg may be eaten on the second day since that day was not Yom Tov. And if the second day is Yom Tov, the egg wasn't forbidden in the first place, since the day which it was laid, the first day wasn't Yom Tov. Rabbi Yehuda paskins based on the premise that the 2 days of Rosh Hashanah are observed only misafik, so either day or the other is yantif, but not both. And Chachamim do not agree to this. This because they hold that the 2 days of Rosh Hashanah is kiyem erichte damya, one kedusha. Therefore, separating Truma and Rosh Hashanah is asur, even with this Tanai that we mentioned just now, because both days are yantif, and a Be'esh and Noda on the first day does not become mutter until the end of the second day, since the second day is a continuation of the first. Mishnah Test. Reb Daitzim Harkin, the same Reb Daitzim Harkin says, "However, one who leads the tefillas on the first day of Rosh Hashanah says, Hachlitzenu Hashem Elokeinu es yom Rosh Chodesh hazeh im hayom im lamachar. Strengthen us, Hashem, on this day of Rosh Chodesh, whether it's today or tomorrow. So if Rosh Chodesh is today, then be mechazik us today, and if it's tomorrow, be mechazik us tomorrow. In the schus of the Rosh Chodesh. And on the next day, he says, strengthen us, Hashem, on this day of Rosh Chodesh, whether it's today or yesterday. The tefillah, the shots, the shliach tzibur, should also say the same thing on Rosh Hashanah itself. Meaning, he says, Yom Zikaron Hazeh, Im Hayom Emesh, Im Hayom Machar, Im Hayom Emesh. Reb Dais is making 2 points. Number 1, Rosh Chodesh is mentioned in the tefillas of Rosh Hashanah. And number 2, it must be made clear that only one of the 2 days is Rosh Chodesh, because otherwise the tefillah would appear to be like sheker. Reb Dais maintains that each day of Rosh Hashanah is treated as a kedusha only misafek, like Rabbi Yehuda, therefore be sheker to imply that either day is kadosh lehod lechacham, but the chacham did not agree with him. According to the chacham, Rosh Chodesh is not mentioned separately at all. Instead, one says Yom HaZikaron, which includes both Rosh Hashanah and Rosh Chodesh. Furthermore, when referring to the Yom HaZikaron, one should not say today or tomorrow, because the 2 days of Rosh Hashanah are a single long period of kedusha, and not 2 separate kedushas. Ad kan.